with
Yes,
Salem's
that's right.
1160, 1190,
1160.
something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
I wonder
had
about the
Ed
efficiency on
Glab
those
on.
floors.
Yeah, because the efficiency was close with moving 670 over to 780. But yeah, 1160, I don't know what the efficiency is going to be there.
They're short.
Yeah.
They'll suffer a little bit. Sorry, Kurt.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. Also, WGN is moving, but they're not moving very far. They're moving a few hundred feet on the same piece of property to enhance the value of the farthest side away from on the property.
And then AM1000 is moving down to Joliet to the array that's down there for, I think it's 850's night array down there. So that'll be interesting how that goes too. It's amazing, especially up in that area where, I mean, the land is worth so much money. I mean, millions of dollars. So it makes sense to move it where you can. And, you know, most of those stations have an FM counterpart too. So,
yeah,
you know, get the money.
There's some really cool transmitter sites around Chicago, especially AMs. Relevant Radio's got 950 that's on the 6th floor of the Midland building off of Western Avenue. And it's got like a 7-bay aux for one of the iHeart stations up there, but the ground radials are spread out, 160 degrees all around. And like this whole roof is covered in ground radials. And they're like, hey, we want to replace the roof.
I was contract engineer for 1490 in Chicago. It was the same thing. It was a freestander on top. It's a freestander on top of it's now old folks home. It was a hotel. Same thing. You get up there and there's ground radials laid across the roof and then strapped around the side. And there actually was an FM up there too at one point, and they still have the coax and everything for that out there. But yeah, a lot of cool sites. The old the original, was it 820 on Belmont there, where XRT used to be. Same kind of thing, a really freestanding tower there right outside a building.
Yeah, the one up in Army Trail, is that the one that Odyssey? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that's that one way.
I want to see it before it goes away, of course. I'm just a total... You think you've seen one transmitter site? You've seen them all? There's no way.
I think the Army Trail one, because the Army Trail one's further in off the freeway. So far, Kirk, speaking of antennas, good reports on the Valcom. Still.
Oh, good.
So that's an interesting little antenna. It makes it a little harder for me. I used to be able to find the site because it's on a curve, and I knew it was coming up because I could see the tower. Now I can't.
Can't see it. How tall is it all?
70 feet. 70 feet.
That's it. Wow. And it's got that little circular doohickey at the top. Is that a little top loading?
Or at the top. Yeah, they call it the Velcosphere. And but the antenna itself is also then wound. It's copper wound around the fiberglass of the antenna and then epoxied on there.
Okay. So it is a coil.
It is, yeah. And you really do need to have a really good ground system, which we're fortunate enough to have.
How tight is that coil, would you say? Can you see the wire?
You can see the wire through the impregnation there, and it's really like a tight spiral all the way up. But the efficiency is actually pretty darn good if you've got a good ground system. We really didn't lose much.
We are seconds from airtime. Hey, everybody on the network. Glad that you have joined us. We are live here on the network. This is the part of the show that gets cut off in the published version. You'll know when we get to the published version here, because I'll be doing a little countdown and count into it. Okay. I'm delighted. A little inside baseball. Last week, and maybe the week before that, I told you we'd be doing today's show live from the new WSM studios in front of the Grand Ole Opry here in Nashville, Tennessee, with their engineer, Jason Cooper. Talked to Jason earlier this week, and he said, Kirk, we're not ready because they have given me a lot more to do. We're going to have to put this off till after the first of the year. So, okay, no problem, Jason. I will scramble and find a guest. So I am so delighted about our guest today. I'll introduce our guest to you in just a minute. It's going to be a very interesting show. We have some visual treats for you, as well as engineering wisdom. So I'm eager to hear that from both Chris Tarr and from our guest. So here we go. We'll start episode number 722. Let's see. I've got the Coke Zero at the ready here, and got my notes, and I think we're good. Here we go. In 3, 2. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything radio engineering wise, from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. Hey, I'm Kirk Harnack. I'm here in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee, otherwise known as my office. And we're glad that you're here with us. It is a typical November day here in Nashville. It is cloudy and dreary. We had lots of rain all night long last night, and it's not that warm out there. It's 58 degrees. So there's your weather forecast for this chilly November afternoon. That's from here. Chris Tarr is with us from his abode in Mukwonago, Wisconsin. Hey, Chris, good to see you.
Hey there. Same. It's good to see you too. Same weather here. So we're almost at the same point here. It gets to be that dreary kind of November thing. And I'm kind of curious when we're going to get our first snowfall. Yeah, there's some hints that we may be getting a little bit of it, but I don't think so. We usually don't get it this early. But anyway, so glad to be here in my little office down here where it's nice and warm as I look at the gray skies outside and go, glad I'm not out there and I'm in here instead.
You have got the most comfortable looking seating arrangements well behind you on the other side of the office.
Oh yeah, well, when I'm working at the office, I've got to take naps and stuff. The other thing, though, that I haven't showed you is that literally right here, I mean, I'm placing my arm there, is my wife's chair for her home office when she works at home. So that can get a little bit distracting, but, so it goes. I keep trying to kick her out, but it won't work.
Does she have honeydews for you that magically appear the moment you close your eyes and lay down on the sofa?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I always make sure that she goes to do something else when I lay down on the sofa. What I'm really waiting for is for one of my deadbeat kids to move out so I can take over their bedroom for my office. Then I can close the door and really sleep and no one will ever know.
Yeah. All right. Texting Chris. He's not answering. How's that? He's probably taking a nap.
There you go.
All right. Well, our guest today is not a nap taker, at least not today. Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Cox is with us. Aaron, it's a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great. I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm at a commandeered radio studio of 99.1 Joy FM and their counterpart Boost Radio. If anybody's familiar with St. Louis, just off of Manchester Road, it's cloudy. It's dreary. I really want to be home cooking a pot of chili right now. We've had a pretty warm fall, and now I'm like, it's chili season. It's soup season, right?
Yeah. That sounds good. That sounds real good.
And Chris, I wanted to ask a question real quick before we got this. When you and your wife have meetings at home at the same time, do you have to schedule it? Do you have to kind of ask like, okay, I got this opening, you got that opening, right?
Yes, we do have to coordinate schedule. No, and fortunately the office is downstairs and she doesn't work. I work, I'm completely based out of the house. She actually has an office at work. So she knows like if I'm for sure going to be in the office all day, she usually goes to work. If I'm going to be out in the field, then she stays home and does her thing. So
now, Chris, just before our show started, you were saying that you had been voice tracking because you do a show on one of your engineered stations, right?
I do, yes.
Yeah. Is your wife, does she ever make an appearance on the show?
No, never. She just laughs at me.
Well, I was going to, because she could be the giggle chick.
You and that radio voice. She's like, all I hear is you going,
And do you have a radio voice, by the way? Because I definitely have a radio voice. I have a normal talking voice, and then I have an on-air voice, although I haven't been on the air in a very long time since I really took off into engineering. But every once in a while it comes on, and my wife goes, "You're not on the radio."
I know. Yeah. For a long time, I did for a long time. Now, I'd been off the air for 25 years, I think, before I started doing this again. So, I'd gotten rid of it all. The worst part is my Wisconsin accent came back. So I was saying, I'm going to go over by the Red Owl there, and do. So that came back. So I really had to work hard to get rid of that. But radio voice Well, there's not, except that, you sound like you're from Wisconsin. And, I just kind of, oh, yeah, I got to go get them beer and them cheese curds, Oh, yeah.
Okay, you have to
So,
indulge me. You got to give me a radio break real quick, just from the hip.
well, wait a minute. Wait, I can actually play a little clip. I've got something already recorded, I think. Classic Country Hits, 94.7 and 106.5 WKCH. Good morning. It is Doc Tar, and I have with me my daughter, Emily. Say hello.
Howdy.
There you go. So there's a little clip.
I love it.
Oh.
I love it.
Oh, yeah.
It's awesome.
Good job. I love that. Hey, if I was going to own a Wisconsin radio station, Chris, and I'm sure people have thought of this, I'd watch that branding very carefully. So, we could have 98.1. 98.1. Or how about, don't you know, 101.5.
This is a true story. I built for a friend of mine. I built a station. He had gotten the construction permit years ago, 106.9 in Door County, and he was stunting. So every day there was a different format, and one of the formats was 106 Polka 9, and they used all polkas all day.
Polka.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I worked at a polka station. We have one of those. Yeah. Yeah, in high school, I played music at a polka station. They still exist out here.
Well, kids, it's all fun and games, and this is great getting to know each other. We have drone video coming up of a big tower and an inspection and cool antennas and things like that. So hang on to your hat, because Aaron Cox is going to talk us through some drone video and some projects that he's been doing. We're going to hear some of Aaron's philosophy on building studios, rebuilding studios, and just the kind of projects that he likes to do. So I look forward to learning a lot. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, is brought to you in part by Nautel. And this week I want to point out something that Nautel is promoting, and that is, they know transmitters can be expensive, especially for a high power transmitter. I've been talking to people lately who said, man, where do I get a tube now for, my high power FM transmitter? They're hard to come by, or they're very expensive. Well, Nautel's doing what they can to make it easier for you. They are offering very flexible financing, some of it at zero APR, zero interest rate at all. You can upgrade your transmitter equipment to Nautel's high-power, solid-state RF solutions using Navitas flexible financing options tailored to your budget and your needs. You can take advantage of their special subsidized promo rates to maximize your savings, enhance your operations. It's a quick and easy application process with fast approvals. You see that apply now button? Well, you can't click your computer screen here, but you can go to the Nautel.com website and click the same button there. Now, don't forget that Nautel transmitters are made in Maine, the state of Maine in the USA, namely the NVLT series and the GV series FM transmitters, the J1000 and the XR series, then the 3 to 100 kilowatt NX series of AM transmitters. They're all made in Maine at their ISO 9001 certified facility, proudly made in the USA, and financing rates as low as 0% for 12 months. If you want to take longer to pay, 2 years, just under 4% APR, and 3 years, just under 6% APR. So Nautel is really doing what they can to help you as a broadcaster get what you need to continue your operations, save money on electricity with better efficiency, have the possibility of going to HD radio within the same transmitter, and give yourself some breathing room. You don't have to worry about where your next tube is going to come from. Yeah, good deal. Thanks a lot, Nautel, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, I'm Kirk Harnack. Chris Tarr is along with us, and our guest is Aaron Cox. Aaron, we're going to jump right into it. Why don't you set us up for this drone video that Suncast is going to show us when you call for it?
So some people are going to see this and recognize it right away. And this is a video that I posted earlier this week. It's a drone video of the St. Louis Community Master Antenna. And this site has gotten a lot of publicity. A lot of people just love, enthusiasts, broadcasters, non-broadcasters. What makes this such an interesting tower site is the fact that you've got 10 full power Class C, or C1, C0s with TPOs of 25, 27, 30, 33 kilowatts, all combining into one dielectric 8-bay V antenna. And so it's a high level combined site where you've got a lower and an upper half of the antenna that's doing analog, and then you also have an upper and lower that are doing digital, and all together
Ooh.
we're just shy of 1,000,000 watts of ERP.
Oh,
And
wow.
so a lot people just love this tower site. It's one of the most favorite that people from across the whole country. And really, what sparked this was back in the 80s. It came to the realization as things were being upgraded, we can't all have our own tower. There's just not enough real estate. Let's build one tower site, and this became kind of a common thing. Ironically enough, in Missouri City, Texas, down in Houston, there's a big combined site. So combined sites kind of became the thing. And here in St. Louis, we've got this giant 10 station combined site. Not only is there 10 stations into the master antenna at the very top, there's a C1 side mounted, there's a C3 side mounted, there's a host of translators, two ways, cellular. This is one busy tower.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's owned by American Tower, ATC. ATC does
Mhm.
a great job. They hire out some of the best in the business to make sure that these stations stay on the air all the time. And one of those is an annual proactive inspection. This is a slow climb. It's looking at these giant 10-inch rigid pieces of coax. There's two of them. One feeds the upper, one feeds the lower. And you almost can't see through the tower because there's so many transmission lines,
That's 10
STL
inch.
lines,
That's 10-inch diameter
10-inch
hard line in there?
going all the
Or
way up to the antenna.
wow. Wow.
And so earlier this week on Monday, we got some very favorable weather. Almost no wind, sunshine, morning of 40 degrees, afternoon of 65. Troy Knotts and Clymer West of ERI, Electronics Research Incorporated over in Indiana, scheduled with us. We all coordinated a shutdown or a switch to auxiliary sites, and it allowed them to ascend this 1,115-foot tower and do a visual inspection of all the hard line. They're looking for air leaks. They're looking for cracks and elbows. There's a lot. I mean, this is up there for a long time, vibrating. It's moving around. It's shifting. Things are bound to crack. But with that much TPO, it's quite volatile, right? So it's got to be taken care of. Otherwise, you're going to be off the air. We're very fortunate that American Tower works with the tenants to make this happen. So we observe all the common practices you can imagine for lockout, tagout, reducing power, RF safety meters. First and foremost, the climber safety, right? Then you have the aspect that I'm flying a drone around a tower. Now, drones come in all flavors, sizes, complexity. This is one that I personally own, made by DJI, and it's very small. It weighs 1.3 pounds. And if you're going to do any sort of flying, one, you should be licensed. Two, you should file a flight plan, especially in a heavily populated area. There are a lot of rules and guidelines. I could spend a lot of time talking about this, but you need to know, does the company allow it? Do the climbers allow it? Is it safe for you? Is it safe for them? There's a lot of practices that go into thinking about this. And so it was a coordinated drone video. We got permission from the company. We got permission from the tower climbers themselves. And of course, they love it because this is something that, they can take a picture from their pocket, right? But when you pull out in a way like that and you get to see the complexity and the size of what they're doing, this antenna is massive. It weighs almost 29,000 pounds.
Wow.
And there's a lot going on here. If you can see above and below them, there are pieces of jumper cable. Those are for the digital components as well. And it was just a really neat opportunity. And I took the opportunity because there was no RF up there. I know a lot of drones could be susceptible to RF. My own money on the line. I didn't want to play cat and mouse with an RF interference issue. So the fact that there was no RF up there made it really quite ideal. And there was no wind. And what a gorgeous day. So this was literally shot this Monday. They started climbing around 8:30 in the morning. They got off the tower around 3:45, and they still had time to go down in the combiner room, crack open some lines, put a network analyzer on it, sweep the line, sweep the antenna, exercise the coax switches, and still get back home that evening. So it's always a pleasure. Anybody who knows Troy Knotts probably has a pretty high-level combined or complex system. Troy and the whole folks at ERI, there's a whole list of them. They do an outstanding job. This antenna, by the way, was manufactured by Dielectric in the mid-2000s. The original antenna went up in 2005, or actually 85, and there was about 5 stations on there. Catastrophe hit in, I think, 2004 when there was a pretty massive burnout, but there was also an opportunity to add more stations. So Dielectric came up with this beautiful antenna, and it was top mounted around 2005, became operational in 2006. And now you have 10 stations all combining into this antenna system right there in the heart of St. Louis. So it's quite gorgeous, and it really showcases the industry for tower climbers, for broadcasters. As an engineer, there's a lot I can show you on the ground, but when it comes to antennas, until you get a shot like this, it's really hard to explain.
Is that tower looks like it is only lighted at night? Is that right?
That is correct. It is an incandescent day painted during the day. That would cover that, and then incandescence at night. So
I just wondered because it looked like the antenna portion of it, while as much as they could paint red was red, it still seemed to lack a lot of red coverage on the antenna portion. Certainly it's not like tower section. So that's why I noticed that the beacon at the top was not a white flashing beacon, looked like a red incandescent. Is that right?
That's correct. And I would suspect you see this happening across the country where companies will opt to put in a dual system probably in the future. Tower painting is pretty expensive. And as long as it's galvanized, there's no real worries. Now, if you're going to see surface rust, they'll probably opt to paint it, right? But if it's in good shape and the paint's probably going to be there for a long time, probably outlast me as far as the galvanization goes. A lot of companies are replacing them with a dual white during the day. There's neighboring towers. There's 2 other neighboring towers owned by different companies, television stations, and you could actually see in the background, possibly in one of those videos, a strobe during the day. That was a Drake lighting system that just went on a TV tower last year, and that's quite impressive in itself. So,
yeah, Drake's kind of just down the interstate from you guys over in Paducah, Kentucky. We did a show from there.
There for a second, Suncast had put up they're in the combiner room, and I failed to get a good shot of the combiner, but there at the end, that's all the switching. That's the final output. Those are giant coaxial switches to switch all the stations to either operate at a quarter power on the upper antenna or a quarter power on the a lower antenna. You wouldn't operate any of it when there's a climber up there, and there's pretty strict guidelines. Matter of fact, you can even kind of see where there's some lockout tagout features there on the final output, just to absolutely make sure, because you can disable all the remote controls you want. You can bypass everything that you want. But when you short a 10-inch piece of hardline there's no RF getting up to that antenna.
That's true. Oh my gosh. Wow. But with the short on it, neither can you use it as a receiving antenna to see what you can pick up.
I know. I've always wanted to do that. I really should. I actually asked that question just the other day.
Chris, what are your thoughts on what we've seen so far?
Crazy stuff. I mean, we have some of those towers like that here, and you mentioned strobes. I know that ATC is slowly moving all of their sites over to strobes. I have a site where we just replaced the strobes with the LEDs, the white LEDs, day and night, and they're great as long as they switch to the right flash pattern at night. I had one where a guy called me and said, "Hey, your tower lights are blinding me in my living room in the evening."
Exactly.
So you got to watch for that. But that is really fascinating. I haven't done much with drones. I've done a little bit. Most of my towers are on the shorter side, so I don't really need to do that. But I have a couple, excuse me, that are 700, 800, 900 feet that, drone would be very, very helpful. And you're seeing a lot more of that now. And what a great way to really get a good view of what's on the tower. Because normally you're sitting there with binoculars or whatever trying to see what's going on. There's nothing like that bird's eye view of what's on your tower to see how everything is performing. And I agree to get licensed and file flight plans if you're going that high in the air, and know the rules. Because the drones are not a toy; they're a tool.
Hey, Aaron, people are going to ask, what drone do you fly?
Manufactured by DJI, and that is the Mavic 2S or Mavic Air 2. And I opted to go with the full outboard controller. I know with a lot of their consumer grade hobby level stuff that you can put your cell phone on there as your video screen. But I thought that was just one more layer of complexity. So I opted for the full blown controller with the antennas, and it just performs so well. I think I'm into that, for a little over $1,000 a few years ago. And my first drone was by GoPro. They made one called the Karma, and what a fitting name.
Yeah.
It was not a good drone.
I heard.
It might have, we were using it out in the woods to look at some land, and it just went in a horizontal fly, and we never saw it again. We're out in the Mark Twain National Forest in Missouri. So I'm sure some hunter this deer season may come upon it, although at the time it was a hobby, so I didn't label it or anything.
Legend has it that it's still flying horizontal to this day.
That's right. It had a full battery. It just went into a sideways fly, and it just, oh man, there it goes.
A couple of comments. I feel so silly now for what I was thinking, because Aaron, when we did a little pre-show planning on today's show, I mentioned that, how does it do in high RF fields? Because stupid me, I forget. There's people climbing on the antenna. The RF is off. And when I first saw your video, I thought, look at that drone. It's flying around in the high RF field. That's really good. I realized, oh, no, it's not. There's people on the tower.
ERI has their own, and it's a enterprise level where it's got infrared camera where they can look at line and elbows. And Troy was even showing me some very cool stuff with that. Oh, I was jealous. I was just, like, oh man, to have something like that where they were able to find burnouts. But he says it does really well around high RF, but I'm not a gambling man.
See, I had heard that ERI specifically tried to find something that had good RFI immunity. I remember them discussing something like that. And there's also a consultant that maybe it was Doug Vernier or somebody like that. Same kind of thing where, they sought out this particular drone that has really good RF immunity. And that's what they use to do pattern studies and things.
As engineers, and I didn't buy a DJI Mavic because I was smart enough to think about this. I thought about it later, but I've got the original DJI Mavic, Mavic Pro, and it's fairly RF immune. And I think one reason is that almost all the circuitry is on one 6-layer circuit board. It doesn't have much in the way of wires flying around. They got it all onto one slam bam circuit board. Now it's got wires, of course, going out to the motors, but that's reasonably easy to RF filter that if they do. I don't know if they do, but I have had a couple of instances where I lost control of it for a minute, but it started to fly home because it quit receiving my signal and my little pipsqueak signal from my controller, and then as soon as it acquired my signal, I regained control. So I've noticed that mostly around high power UHF transmitters, I have lost control but regained it pretty quickly. And the return to home feature is really good. Around the tower, return to home might go through the tower and might go through a guy wire, so you got to kind of be aware that might happen, but so far it's been good. But there are other drones. Remember the original, what was there one that called the flying coffee table. People called it that. The big white drone. I forget the name of that.
About.
Yeah.
That was an original drone. I mean, it was 10 years ago or so probably. And it did look like a big.
And if you open that up, it's got wires all around. It's got electronics here, electronics there, and it's got wires everywhere. And so I was told, and a friend loaned me one of those one time, and that thing was deaf. You had to put an amplifier on the Wi-Fi transmitter for it to even do very well. But oh well, whatever. Hey,
real quick, could I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You brought up a great point. I think if you're going to fly and you're going to get into that and into towers, something I could give you a tip is, like Kurt said, when you take off and you have that home point set, already be on the side of the tower, you want it to come back if and when you lose communication, because it will try to fly maybe through a tower or through a guy wire, and that gets a little dangerous. The other thing to keep in mind is if it's windy, just like flying an airplane, you want a nose wind, not a tailwind. When I first started flying, I had a wind come up behind me and tried to push me right into the tower, and so I almost lost that.
Yeah.
So just something to think about. Fly like an airplane.
And the drone has GPS. It'll try to maintain its position. It also has accelerometers. It'll try, but if you get a gust of wind, well, guess what? It's going to lurch forward before it is able to correct, and it may lurch forward enough to wham into the tower. So
that was just a little tidbit I wanted to throw in there.
What I was going to ask you about, we're going to go to break here in a second, but I noticed that one thing the anti-drone people worry about is, oh, you're flying over the park and you're looking at my daughter playing softball. No, the camera's really wide. We really can't tell which one is your daughter. That's not a thing. But I will say that some of the drones, even consumer-ish drones, like the DJI Mavic 2 Zoom, does have an optical zoom lens that, is in front of the 4K sensor. So on a tower, that would be helpful if you want to zoom in and look at, is there a cotter pin there? Is this bolt tight? Is the bolt even there? Right? Have you ever gotten to play with one of these that has an optical zoom on it?
I have, and they come in so handy because you can really get in detailed as long as you're not bouncing around because of the wind. We put up a replacement 6-bay ERI, and about 6 months in, we started getting a lot of Visuar, and it had a brand new paint job on it. But we flew up there and we looked at it, and a horizontal run off of the vertical inner bay was really discolored. And so when we got a tower crew, I said, why don't you go ahead and pop that third bay off and see? And sure enough, it was all, the whole inner was just charred to a crisp, and whatever the reasoning was, installation, something of that matter. But ERI was great to work with on getting a replacement part very quickly. But it really, we identified it. It was very obvious. And without that zoom, I probably wouldn't have seen it. And it's one thing to look at a video on a controller. It's another thing to get it back and put it on a big TV and review it.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah. That's true. Wow, you're invigorating me to maybe charge the drone up and go fly it some more. That is so cool. Hey, we got to take a quick break. Chris Tarr is with us today. Glad to see Chris back in the co-host chair. Aaron Cox is our guest. We're talking about engineering. He's going to talk more about some projects that he's been involved with, and we'll take a look at more pictures coming up in a minute. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, is brought to you in part by our good friends at Broadcast Bionics. If you're an engineer, you can be a hero by recommending Broadcast Bionics stuff to enhance the operation of your radio station. Let's take a look at the Bionic Studio now from Broadcast Bionics.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email, together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These could be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
I like the whole philosophy at Bionics, at Broadcast Bionics. Do what you're doing now, but let their technology help you make better and more content, especially for sharing on social media and for making your own content better as information gets surfaced. Check it out at Broadcast Bionics. Thanks for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Really appreciate you. All right, with Chris Tarr is here with us from Mukwanago, and Aaron Cox is here from St. Louis, Missouri. Aaron, I have a special place in St. Louis in my heart. You didn't know this, but I was born in St. Louis 62 years ago. So
Were you really?
I lived yeah. My
Well,
dad went to seminary there.
Everybody will ask, where'd you go to high school? That's the St. Louis thing. I don't know what it is. And have you ever had toasted ravioli?
Well, we moved away when I was like 1, so I don't remember any of that.
See, your St. Louis accent gave it away, though. I mean, I knew that's where you were born.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. All right. We're talking to Aaron Cox about projects. Aaron, hey, fill us in real quick. You're a corporate engineer with Relevant Radio. Is that right?
I am. I'm a regional broadcast engineer, so I have about 45 stations in my purview that range from Chicago, Minneapolis, Dallas, and Houston. Some pretty major markets, but Lexington to Kentucky and points in between, parts of Ohio as well.
You work with Andy Disterhoff, don't you?
Andy Disterhoff. Yes. Andy's
a good friend of mine.
Andy's a great guy, and he talks very good about you. I don't know what you paid him to say that, but I'm just kidding.
I'm still paying him. I'll be paying him for a long time for that.
But I really love it. The job entails coordinating with local contractors on regular maintenance, site visits, and then going out in the field for projects. When I was thinking about things to share with Kirk for the show, I just kept coming up on all of these Nautel transmitter installs. But I think if you've seen one install, you've probably seen them all, right? But I think I've installed just about every transmitter Nautel currently has in some form or fashion. And I really love their products, and I love that people are still buying new transmitters and investing into properties, even AMs. I put in AMs in small markets, medium markets, major markets. Without reinvesting into the station, you can't expect it to stay on the air and live a long, happy life. And so it's great to work with a broadcaster who believes in doing things the right way. So I do that. I also do contract work. I own my own business, and I tend to take care of a lot of good religious broadcasters. Bot Radio based out of Kansas City, Joy FM Boost Radio in St. Louis. I also contract for Odyssey in St. Louis, doing anything from transmitter work to studio installs. And you might think to yourself, how many jobs can you have? And you can have a lot, because I know that you've touched on this a lot in different episodes, but the engineering community, while large, is getting smaller and shrinking all the time, and there's more and more stations with needs. And so I'm very, very thankful that Relevant Radio lets me have a full-time job with benefits, but also lets me partake in other people's projects as well.
Chris and I have talked a little bit on the show about work-life balance, and I just thought of that. And we've actually changed it now. Instead of work-life balance, it's just work-work balance.
Well, that's right. And I'm the same way as Aaron. I do a lot of local religious broadcaster stuff as a contractor, because you can't find anybody doing this stuff anymore. And more than once, I went, you know what, I need to dial things back a little bit. But first of all, I'm having too much fun, and second of all, if I didn't, nobody would. So, Aaron's right. It's is the upside is the technology is getting more and more reliable. So, there's still a balance being struck there as time goes on, and we pick up more and more stations, things like solid state transmitters and IP consoles and things, make supporting it a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Yep.
And you bring up
good points.
And I wanted to just build on that. As a contractor, it's really easy to take on a good contract client who wants to invest back into themselves with transmitters, consoles, HVAC, generators, doing the right things. It's harder to take on the clients that just want a piecemeal part and piece. You know what I'm talking about. So if you're interested in getting into contract work, or if you're in contract work, something to consider, pick those who are willing to, not wake you up in the middle of the night or disturb you on Christmas or things like that.
Aaron, Chris and I have talked numerous times about this. We sure have found it to be true that today's equipment that has IP connectivity, as long as you know it's installed correctly and well, there's so much that service work that you can do remotely and troubleshooting you can do remotely. I did have to send somebody to a transmitter site today in American Samoa to reboot a piece of gear. But guess what? We realized, me and the other engineer, we realized we've got a web-based power outlet strip up there. Let's plug. We didn't know this piece of equipment might have a problem that a reboot would solve. So now it's going to go on the web strip, and that's kind of a that's a extreme way to solve a problem. But sometimes if the transfer site's hard to get to, which this one is, that's better than nothing. So again, my experience has been all this connectivity we get with our equipment makes life a lot easier and less expensive for the radio station.
It is. It's really useful. It's really useful to be able to log into something anywhere, and having failover abilities is also great. You can't have enough failover, but you can also have too much. I say that lightly. I think that sometimes there's that balance of too complicated, too complex, and you self-induced issues versus having just a simple failover feature or something, having auxiliaries, having backups, but don't make it too hard. Keep it simple.
I like to say, come up with the elegant solution. I mean, I've got, I'm basically one full-time guy now. I've got contract engineers and a couple part-time people, but I oversee 21 full power signals and probably another 25 translators. And I'll tell you what, I could not do that without technology. And, we're down to our last tube transmitter now, and everything is audio over IP. And I'll tell you what, in the 4 years since I started this job and have kind of made that progression, even though we've added a couple of stations, my workload has gotten lighter and lighter because of all of that. And I know when I was with Odyssey and we did the Milwaukee and Madison upgrades, and I think Hartford, Connecticut was another one where, these things really allow you to manage several things at once, and you're going to have to do that. I'm getting off on a tangent now, but that's really where the industry's going.
Well, speaking of IP connectivity and being able to do things to the equipment remotely, set it up differently, adjust the mic processing, move a fader somewhere else. Aaron, you've got some pictures of some console installations. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so Odyssey has been rolling out in markets that have some very legacy consoles, some new Axia Quasar consoles, and this was kind of my first taste in this. Here you see a PR&E Vistamax console. This was a routable console that was pretty high end in its day, but is a little long in the tooth, and parts are getting a little bit scarce. So in Air Studios in St. Louis, here comes new Quasar consoles, and this was my first taste of the Quasar. I've seen them at NAB. I see them in pictures. I see them all over the place, and I really, really was excited about this. I was so excited that one of my customers' clients, Joy FM Boost Radio, is needing an upcoming studio refresh. And at first, we were going to repurpose an Element console, and we said, no, we're going to do it right. We're going to put in a brand new Quasar. And here you have the SR series, and this is the finished product. Odyssey's regional director, Armando Gonzalez, took this as we were finishing up. This is WHHL Hot 104.1. It's a hip-hop R&B station. This was one of 6 Air Studios that is still in progress. They're saving the best for last, the big MOX, KMOX, 1120 AM.
Yeah.
When it comes to news talk facilities, they come with an extra layer of complexity. So we're working out intercom features and edit station mix minuses and things like that. So that was last weekend. I was actually tearing out KMOX's Air Studio, and that was a lot of fun. So thankful to Odyssey and all of them for letting me be a part of that.
So, something a little surprising, that those Quasar consoles, those suckers are heavy. Did you lift that one by yourself, Aaron?
I did, and I think it was like the first one I actually put in. So they had it mocked up on the workbench, and here it is, just 3 cables, 2 power cables, because it had 2 power supplies, and then maybe a main and a backup Ethernet cable. I plopped this sucker off the workbench, and I'm just going to go. I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty stout. I wasn't expecting that.
It's made of real metal.
Yeah, that was a smaller frame too, I think that they opted to go, I forgot, maybe 12 channels for the music stations and 16 channels for the news talkers.
I think Telos used to ship their consoles in custom cardboard boxes that had custom foam. Not anymore. They're shipped in wooden crates now because they're kind of heavy. They're
And
not going anywhere.
We received it here at Joy FM Boost Radio. We're going to put in a brand new Quasar SR 16 channel, and it came freight, came all boxed up, and it was not a light load. So I'm very excited. We're going to start that at the beginning of January, and it's going to be a real fun project to refresh. Even going to put in the nice talent panels and everything else. And I've seen some recent photos of some studios down in Nashville that have the XR with the motorized faders, and even the talent panels with the motorized faders, and just the quality of the product is phenomenal. As a matter of fact, I'm in the room that's going to get basically gutted. The furniture is going to come out, new furniture is going to come in, new lighting, and a new Quasar console. And what I'm seeing in front of is an Audio Arts R60, and this thing has really stood the test of time. I hate to take it out. It's the last analog legacy product in the whole facility. But you know what? There's a lot of good manufacturers in our industry, and we're very lucky to have all of them that provide not only good products, but good support for engineers who really need it. Because like I said, that community, as big as it is getting smaller. There are less and less people to take care of this. So when you're putting in good products, that really counts.
Yeah. It certainly does. Chris, you've replaced a few consoles in your group, haven't you?
Oh yeah, no, we've done. Now I haven't gotten any Quasar yet, but we certainly did several of the what are the smaller ones, the smaller IP consoles, the desk, and I think we did we did one.
Yeah, the desk, the rack, the IQ. Yeah.
Yeah, we did a couple of IQs and an Element and a few other things. So yeah, I mean, we've had some, like at old radio systems where it was like the end of the Blues Brothers movie with the Bluesmobile where they get out of it and the whole thing falls apart. It's kind of like that with the radio systems where one last time I shut the power supply off and the whole thing just turns to dust and it falls apart. But yeah, I mean, Aaron's completely right. I mean, with the way that things have gone now, I've got my Fort Atkinson facility where I run a bunch of our stations from, our data center there, is all audio over IP and fiber and all these other things. And, the ability to just make changes on the fly from home is great. I can log in, and if something's going on, we've had situations where, a piece of gear that I've had to route through has failed, either like an EAS insert or something like that, where, we're off the air and it would be, 40 minutes before I would get in there. Well, I can just log right in and patch around it really quickly. And again, talking about backups, I've got automation playout systems at the transmitter sites that just automatically kick over, with the Omnias, they have the audio failover inputs. So I can just plug it right into that. And if the audio goes away, it fails over to the backup playout machine. So, that's a real simple solution that, that is great for when we're doing some work. I can actually just force it to roll over to the other system while I'm at the building doing work or whatever. So, but yeah, audio over IP has changed the game. That's for certain. And so as things like interplexes and items like that have really improve the quality of the product, but also has made things so easy to work with, where we're able to kind of reduce staff a little bit, but actually increase the quality of the product.
Hey, tell you what, it's almost time to take our next break, but Aaron, why don't we buzz through a few more pictures of interest? What would you like to? The relevant radio. That's what you said in the comments. So let's see some pictures from there.
Absolutely. So this is down in Austin, Texas. This is 980 KIXL. This is a 4-tower. It's a 4-tower. There's 3 in line with a dog leg. And we put in some brand new Phase Tech ATUs and a phaser. So all 4 got brand new ATUs. So we redid the feeders. There is another regional engineer out of Wisconsin. That's Chris Shahantek. And then Chris is working on reintegrating some of the lighting choke and everything on the towers that are lit. Here's a cabinet that on the left side is much bigger because that is where all of the ATU components go. But on the right side, we had the four. We thought about this. We said, with all the diplexing and changes going on, certainly somebody's going to come and want to. So we're going to already have this cabinet set up for filtering. No sooner do we get this in, and we're right in the middle now at this site, a diplex with Odyssey in Austin, Texas. Kurt Gorman is a brilliant mind in AM radio. His dad started Face Tech, and I've had the pleasure of working with him, Matt in his shop, and Tiger and Bill out in the field. And these guys are just amazing when it comes to directional AM. And I know about this much of what they do. It's not much. It's a very finite amount. I always enjoy learning with them. And as a contract engineer and a young engineer, I find that every day is a new day, and I'm always willing to learn something new. I think if you're not learning something new, maybe your mind's not in the right place, or maybe you're ready to retire. I don't know. But every day is a new day and an opportunity to learn. So things I was doing 5 years ago might have a new way to do it, that I see. So I want to preface that having good contacts within this industry and really knowing people really helps. So a few more photos of this change out. This is inside the ATU at one of the cabinets. And again, Face Tech does a great job. There's also some other great companies that do fantastic work, just like Kintronics, Carl T. Jones, and some of them. This is the actual phaser. We also added some non-directional operation because we didn't have that before. So now we have some push button non-direction capabilities, and you'll see some handy wiring work that we laid out new wiring to all the towers, and doing projects is probably one of my more favorite things. Somebody asked me this recently, do you like projects or do you like maintenance? And I kind of had to think about it. I guess they kind of go hand in hand. I like them both. Maintenance means that you're probably in a good space and you're just kind of, maintaining things, and projects can really take a lot of time, but they sure are fun. I mean, projects, going out in the field and doing this work, although it takes time away from your family, they are just always different, and you're always learning something new.
We are talking. Oh, there's a last picture there. Yeah, that's the control wiring, right, to the different towers.
It is. So that would be the interface from the controller on the left side and then out to the tower on the right side, just so you have a good connecting point and keeping it all dressed and looking nice, and plenty of spares, as you see there.
Yeah, room to do more. Good deal. It's This Week in Radio Tech. We're talking to Aaron Cox. He's a contract and corporate engineer in the St. Louis, Missouri area, travels a lot with his engineering work and loves projects. Chris Tarr is with us as well. I'm Kirk Harnack. Our show is brought to you in part by Broadcasters General Store, and they represent one of your favorite manufacturers, and that's Henry Engineering. Hank Landsberg, what a cool guy. He develops equipment that's just right for the job. That's what I love about Hank's gear. The Henry Engineering Sports Pod is something that every station needs if you do remote broadcasts, or even if you do talk shows in the studio and you have some analog gear that works great for that too. Your remote broadcast can be easier and more foolproof with the new Sports Pod. It has talkback so you can communicate with the talent, and there's remote mic control. No more hollering, "Hey Bob, your mic's on." Plus all the great features of the original Talent Pod. The new Sports Pod has this and more. The Sports Pod is an announcer's mic headphone controller and an intercom system for use by talent at remote broadcasts. Now, it's ideal for use at sporting events, on-location broadcasts, or in a studio. Sports Pod is similar to Henry Engineering's Talent Pod, but with 3 additional features. An integrated, intercom system. It's got active mic audio on-off switching, and the ability to remotely control the mic. It solves the problem of providing talent with a local mix and an IFB headphone audio, and it provides duplex off-air communication with a producer or engineer. So its simplicity allows for error-free use by non-technical people. Ooh, that's important. And it provides an easy way to link several units for use at broadcast with multiple announcers. Check this thing out, the Sports Pod from Henry Engineering. Read about it, download the brochure, see if it's right for you, because it may very well be. It'll probably solve some problems that you have, maybe problems you didn't know that you had, and you realized, oh, you mean we can solve that without yelling at each other? The Henry Sports Pod from Broadcasters General Store. Their website, you can order right from the website or give them a call. Website is bgs.cc. And you can call them at 352-622-7700. They have all the stuff you need, even if you're doing television broadcasting from your studio. They can help you with that too. They have lighting systems and there's lots of stuff for television. Great people at BGS, Broadcasters General Store. Love what they do for our industry. I've been buying from them for, my goodness, since the mid 90s, I suppose. Sitting in the office next to Sam Phillips. Kurt, call them pretty girls over at BGS and get us a good price. So that's what I would do. Thanks a lot, BGS, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right. Aaron Cox is our guest. Chris Tarr is with us as well. Aaron, what topic you want to hit next?
So we had a pretty interesting project where we had to rebuild a self-supporting tower in St. Louis that was quite dangerous. What made it dangerous was its age and the fact that when they originally put it down, they encased the bottom in concrete instead of pouring piers underneath it. So if you can imagine what 70 years of concrete corrosion did, it was a little on the dangerous side. So if you can imagine rebuilding a 600-foot, actually 550-foot tower to the beacon, self-supporter, it's quite narrow. A lot of self-supporters that high get a nice wide base. This one is really landlocked, and so it's very tight. So we had to really partner with some good companies to make this possible. And what really made it challenging was there was a school literally directly below it. So there was a lot of safety concerns when it came to rebuilding this tower. We were given basically the middle of May through the beginning of August, and we had to keep the stations on the air. The tower is home to 2 directional FMs, a C3 and a C2. So you have the complexity of directional FMs you're dealing with. You also have the complexity of just coordinating, shutting down streets, permitting, zoning, and it really went quite well. So if you wanted to throw some of those videos and pictures up, this is a drone video where this is the beginning. You can see the old tower is painted, the new tower is galvanized, and you can see the school building literally surrounding that. That's all gymnasium, classroom, everything else. So we had to close that all out. And here you've got most of the tower is being stick built by crane, picking it up piece by piece, bolting it together. It got to a point though where the rest of it was pre-put together in the parking lot and then helicoptered in. So now you're going to helicopter 2,500-pound sections of tower up piece by piece. And we put up an ERI lambda section with an ERI directional antenna at the very top. There were so many companies involved in this, Kirk, that I couldn't even try to list them all. I think at one point in time, I counted like 25 different groups, organizations, or companies that were involved in some form or fashion in this tower. And there you've got climbers that are literally stick building. You can see I really kept my distance on this one. You know, this is not just an inspection. This is a lot more tedious work with a lot higher risk of danger. So again, going back to flying drones around towers, I think you really have to use common sense, know what your limitations are and what's responsible. Here's a tower crew that is putting up part of the new ERI 6-bay half-wave space directional antenna at the very top. And that's what went on the Lambda section. These guys were characters. You know, they worked in and out of good weather, bad weather, and they basically had to work 7 days a week. There was no time off. It had to be done before. Not only did the new tower have to go up, the old tower had to come down. And the old tower was so old, there's no busting loose those bolts. So as you keep progressing through the photos here, it was so many people involved. You've got old tower in the forefront, new tower in the forefront, old tower in the background there. And, you know, keeping all these stations on the air, we had to actually move generators, build new auxiliary sites for these stations to make sure that they stayed on the air during this whole process. There was no downtime for these radio groups, and that's what ultimately counted in the end. Here's an ERI combiner, and you're going to see some photos of Jeff Taylor and Troy Knotts that are basically sweeping these combined systems, looking at all the harmonics, making sure all the tolerances are within the specifications of what the license says. And the more I'm around industry experts, the more I'm amazed at what these individuals know. It just is absolutely exhilarating to learn and to watch and to know where radio has come from. I mean, one of the oldest forms of communication and medium, and here it is today. When I got into the industry, I thought this isn't an evolving industry, but it is. It's ever changing. Technology is advancing. It's getting better, faster, more efficient, sleeker, better sounding, and it's a good time to be a broadcast engineer. I know there's some stigma around what the industry is going to hold in the next 15, 20, 30 years, but I believe it is strong as ever and should be around throughout my entire lifetime. One thing I can say as a broadcast engineer and as having good contract clients is getting them to invest in themselves. And if you're going to rebuild a site, take the time to standardize it. I really take a lot of pride in having a standard layout, color coding. If you go to any of our sites, they're going to look the same. The same piece of equipment is going to be in the same rack position with the same wire and the same IP address. It really keeps things simple. It's well put together, but it's simple to understand, and you're not reinventing the wheel every time you go around to a transmitter site. So I really picked up young in my career that standardizing things will only help you in the future. When you go from one site to the next and you're having to rethink, well, what did I do there? What was that? Why did I do that? It becomes pretty challenging at times. So standardization is pretty key.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a project. What a project that was. Tell you what, we've got just enough time for just a few more pictures. Aaron, would you like to, is there a folder left that you'd like to look at?
Oh my gosh, yeah. We did an auxiliary project. If you can click on auxiliary site project, this is another instance where we had a pretty good client that had an AM tower auxiliary, that the AM tower was going away and they knew they needed a good auxiliary. And so we partnered with Nexstar to make this happen. And if you actually see, there's two towers next to each other. They're separated by 70 feet, believe it or not. The stainless was built in 2000 to support the DTV transition, and the painted one was built in 1960 and still has the analog batwing top mounted with the line still pressurized, even though they're not in use. And so here you've got a drone, you had a drone video where you could see the 8-bay ERI antenna that we mounted at 900 feet center of radiation. So this auxiliary gave this station a near identical, and this is a station that comes off that big St. Louis combined site. And when you have a big combined site, you're only as good as your auxiliary, right? Because a lot of things can go wrong and it needs a lot of maintenance. So you don't want to be on a little bitty stick or a little bitty, the last time that I think that there was a burnout or a big problem, it took a lot of time. I was even told 14 months to get everything back in order. So think of how this is going to pay off for this customer and how it's going to help me. I can do all kinds of maintenance at this main site now, and the listeners aren't going to know the difference because the audio processing is the same, the transmitter's the same, and no one will know that you're on this auxiliary. We've spent months on this site while we rebuilt the main site. So projects are fun. Working with customers who are willing to reinvest in themselves, that's fun. And I'd just like to end that there are some great people in the industry, and knowing people is great. Knowing Kirk Harnack and Chris Tarr is great. You make connections, get out there. I think that the more that you network within the industry, the more you're willing to learn, the more you're willing to absorb, and it just builds on the life of a modern heartland engineer.
Chris, I know you've got to agree with everything Aaron just said. It sounds like you talking almost.
It does. No, I love that passion, and Aaron, you hit right on the head. It's networking. It's getting to know people, as I like to call it, the Rolodex of people smarter than me. To where to go, and as you said, it's just a pleasure watching these guys work and realizing that I always say it's really hard to know where to go if you don't know where you've been. And I think that watching these really experts do what they do, and it gives you a lot of insight into where things are going. And I also am very positive about the future of radio. I think I think it's got a bright future. I think that technology is getting to the point now where the quality of the product is better than ever, audio and transmission systems. And I agree. It's a lot of fun to be able to do these upgrades and these projects. And then just as fun, once they're done, to be able to just sit back and maintain them and know that, know that they're going to be reliable. And I also agree 100% on standardization. I use at all my sites, since we're all on a VPN, all the IP ranges for the equipment is the same at each site. And, I try to use the same types of equipment everywhere. And, all of that is just steps that, modern engineers take to keep things reliable and keep things easy to run.
Indeed. Boy, great pictures, great stories, and advice from Aaron and from Chris. We got coming up. We'll have our tip of the week. Oh yeah, Aaron, forgot to tell you. It's a standard thing I do is forget to tell our guests that we expect a tip of the week right after the last commercial break. And Chris Tarr always has something at the ready, so I don't worry about Chris. Our show is brought to you in part by Angry Audio and the Rave Console. Chris and I we're gonna tag team on this commercial. Are you ready, Chris? Suncast is gonna play this pretty video of the Rave Console. Here it comes. Here comes the pretty video. Well, here it is. There it is. Yes. All right, Chris. This Rave Console is a thing of beauty and grace. Tell us a little bit about it, Chris.
Oh, I'll tell you what, the Rave console is fantastic. It's, you see a lot of these little consoles nowadays, and they're, small in size, but also small in features. Not the Rave. We are talking about the fine aluminum. Look at the etching on that. That's not going to rub off. That's not going anywhere. There's preview on each input. There's an program bus, an audition bus. They've got a built-in mix minus. They've got remote control for on-air lights, things like that. Of course, speaker muting, and everything in the back is Studio Hub adapters. So there's really no punch blocks or anything needed. You can take your those great Studio Hub Plus connectors, plug them in the back. They've got headphones, they've got level indicators, basically all the features of a full-size console in a small size and with a much smaller price. But it's totally functional. So if you've got a production studio, if you've got maybe a voice tracking studio, or even an on-air studio. Nowadays, there are a lot of on-air studios that are smaller and don't need all that I/O. This is the console to get. It is the Angry Audio Rave, and it has all the features you need for either on-air, producing, or podcasting. Check it out at angryaudio.com today.
Chris, you should be on the radio. You're good at that. Thanks very much. And go to angryaudio.com to find out all about it. And you can buy this console from any of the typical U.S. Dealers, and it's available around the world too at various dealers around the world. Go ahead, Chris. What?
By the way, I gotta get something in because Catfish did this on Facebook the other day, and that is the C6S software. And he's got a special going on right now. No, he said it's as long as his wife doesn't find out about it. That's how long it's going to run.
That's right. She's a sharp lady. She's going to find out quick.
She's going to figure it out sooner or later. But you can get $200 off of the Chameleon C6S software. All you have to do is use the code SHOPANGRY at checkout for $200 off of the Chameleon C6S software. It is fantastic.
Shop Angry is the checkout code. All right. And that's a product that you buy directly from Angry Audio, right?
That is correct. That's a piece of software. So go to angryaudio.com to get it.
Okay, good deal. Hey, this week in Radio Tech also brought to you by Max Connect Wireless. My good friend Gary Morrill is here to tell you about the advantages of using this amazing wireless product. Gary?
I'm Gary Morrill, Midwest Regional Director of Engineering for Alpha Media. When I first spoke with Josh Bone about Max Connect, he told me they'd work great for remote transmitter sites where connectivity was a challenge. And he's absolutely right. We even have sites where we're using this as a backup to our STL using Max Connect's dual carrier option, and it works perfectly. We also have times where we need to be able to get out to a venue where it's kind of challenging because everybody and his brother is trying to stream video at the same time, like at a big sporting event. And you know what? Our data gets through every time because it's prioritized packet data. It works for us. It'll work for you. Max Connect. Check it out.
We have used Max Connect Wireless for several of these shows for This Week in Radio Tech. And I certainly have used Max Connect at transmitter sites when we didn't have good internet going or no internet at all yet. So it's very, very useful. Check it out, maxconnect.com. And you can get their service through AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon, or through Bell in Canada. And you get prioritized data with a fixed IP address, and it just works well. Thanks a lot, Max Connect, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, it is time for our tips of the week because he sets such a fine example for us all. Chris Tarr is up next with our tip of the week. Chris?
Let's talk UPS units. They are all over the place. Most of them are really bad. Some of them are very good. The one I'm really high on right now is made by APC or Schneider, and it is the higher end Smart Connect devices. And what's great about these is they're web enabled. And so you can log in and see the exact status of runtime, battery health, the last self-tested device. You can have it email you when it kicks in or out, so you know if there's power outage in your building. So they're really well featured. And one of the coolest things ever is my oldest one, which is now I think 4 years old. I got an alert the other day that it's time to replace the battery. It didn't pass the self-test. So you click on it, and then right there's a button where you can press it and order another battery. It gets shipped right to your door, and then you can go and put it in. So there's UPSs really don't do you much good if you buy a cheap one and they fail and they take you off the air. There's really no sense in having one then. These have just been really, really good to me. And the web feature is just so awesome. It's so great to get an email when, it senses that the power's out or on, or if there's a brownout. And again, the battery health and things like that, just to have that information, especially when, again, my furthest site is, 2.5 hour drive, to just know ahead of time. Again, this one that I got the alert for is a site over in Minnesota. So, I will know long before it dies that it needs to have a new battery.
And when you press that ordering button, it shows up, and you need to go ahead and schedule 3 men, a couple of boys, and a dog to help you pick that sucker up.
Now the battery's about this big. I could do it myself.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Well, this is a rack mount. This is not one of those big ones. This is actually a rack mount UPS.
I want to put that in the show notes. Would you send me a link to the one you're talking about exactly?
Sure, no problem.
Okay. That'd be great. Chris mentioned that the cheap UPSs can be a bad deal. And I've had excitement in my life several times due to cheap UPSs. I'm sure Chris has too. One time was so exciting. We had a UPS fail at just the wrong time, such that, Larry Fuss and I received a police escort at high speed from the Pongo Pongo airport back to the radio station to get the station back on the air before our flight had to leave. We actually got a complete police escort. Yeah.
I figured out with UPSs that you get what you pay for, and these cheap ones tend to fail off. So when they die and they shut down and take everything with it. So it's not even worth having it. Whereas, the more expensive ones will fail safe. And again, with these, I don't have to wait for, an audible alert or something to know that I need to do something. It'll actually send me the results of each automatic test and let me know if there's something wrong.
That's awesome, because what's the use of a beeping UPS when it's a 2.5 hour drive away at a transmitter site that nobody's at?
Exactly. I got burned way too many times.
Yeah. All right. Aaron Cox, you're in the spotlight for a tip of the week. Garnish us with your wisdom, please.
I just have to build on what you guys were talking about with UPSs, because Henry Engineering makes an amazing fail-safe. The backups, the back UPS fail-safe.
The back UPS,
will allow you to never have to make that drive or that middle of the night call. And it's ironic that you brought this up, because I just installed 18 of them. And as I'm installing them one by one, I'm thinking, never again, you UPS, are you going to get me? They're a great product. They give you a contact closure to take back to a remote control. It allows the UPS to fail in great fashion while keeping your rack alive, and you can get to it in a timely manner, even though you'd love to have your rack always on UPS battery backup. So my words of wisdom, here it is. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses. And I think that that's something that takes a lot of inner self. And what I mean by that is there's things that I excel at and there's things that I struggle with. And I have people I can call and depend on. The Gary Tibbetts and the Hughes of Broadcaster General Store, the Chris Kriegers of RF Specialties and the Jeff Weltons and Jeff Wilsons. I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call and ask. Matt Levin is my go-to processing guy. Having an arsenal of people, and it builds on what I was already saying with networking and having that community. Know what you're good at, know what you're not good at, and be willing to pick up the phone and call somebody. As much as I want to pride myself on being able to do everything myself, I know what I can do and I know what I can't do. So there it is.
That is great advice. I've noticed that Chris Tarr never calls me for engineering advice, and I guess that
I don't know what
kind
that
of sets the
says.
stage where I stand there, because he's going to get a dad joke and not good engineering advice. That's why.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is I will eventually get good advice. It's just the dad jokes that I got to get sit through to get there. It's a long. I'm telling you, it is a long road from A to B with Kirk. A long road.
That's hilarious. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us with a last-minute invitation. Really appreciate the wisdom and experience that you've shared on the show with me and Chris. Thank you so much.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
And I hope you would look forward to a call from us again in a few months or a year or so, and we'll do it all over again. See what you've learned in the last year from Chris.
A lot.
Chris, thank you for being here today. It's good to see your face. I'm so glad you're able to join us.
Good to be here. And actually very good to have a day where I can be here. It's been crazy. So I'm glad to be here and hanging out.
Next week, we're going to have a couple of engineering hurricane survivors on the show. That's going to be interesting. Christian Vang and Dave Anderson will be here. So hey, check us out. We'll see you next week. Big thanks to Suncast for being at the controls for this show. He always does a great job, and I do appreciate him very much. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.